We have the most interesting panel on DLD. It's about content, so it's all about what publishers think about at the moment. And we have here Trip. Where's my cameraman? Ah, it's here. So Trip is doing a service called, can you see that anywhere? Here? Where? Ah, okay. Called Script. 60 million unique users per month. And it's mainly a web-based service, but they just got $30 million additional dollars to do mobile stuff, and we will talk later about that. So it's one of the most interesting content platforms on the net at the moment. This I wanted to show you. So then we have Marco from Instapaper. I hope you can see that. Instapaper is a quite popular service, especially, so I always use it on Twitter, and you have this little button in your client, read it later, and then it's saved to the Instapaper website, which sounds very simple, but which is quite powerful because you get something like your personal paper in a second. And so we'll talk about the future of your service. He's a one-man show, so you have something like 45 people working on the product, so you are alone. We'll talk later about why and how do you finance your new wonderful house in New York. So we are also talking about TweetDeck. So TweetDeck may be the most advanced Twitter client. It's the Rolls-Royce of Twitter clients with 25 million downloads. And it's installed at every major media company. It's a discovery tool for journalists, and we talk about how do you find content and how do you distribute that. And so we have Patrick here, who has to represent the traditional publishers, but he's a digital guy, so he's head of the iLab at Burda, thinking all day about how you get on all these devices I brought here, like the Galaxy Tab here, or this is a cracked version of Der Spiegel, a German news magazine, a little one, on the Kindle device. And so we're talking about how do you discover that content, how do you consume content in the future. And my first question is for you. So what would you recommend to Patrick's? So you're investing a lot of money to go on mobile devices at the moment to make a great experience on these devices with your big archive of documents. You have a shop and things like that. And you told me yesterday that you have some recommendations for publishers doing all their separate apps with their magazines. So what would you recommend to do? Join Script.
Well, when we started Script, the idea was to provide a publishing platform for content owners with written content. So this could be an individual with a school paper, or it could be a big publishing company with a magazine or a book. And we take any written content, put that on the web, and then distribute that through search engines and through the social web. What's happening right now is there's this huge shift to content consumption on mobile devices. People are now want to consume content on smartphones, on tablets, and as you can see with the success of something like Instapaper, people really want to take written content and shift that to other devices. So as part of Script Services, one of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to really work on a lot in the next year, is adding mobile as another distribution channel. And what you're seeing right now is that a lot of content owners they recognize this is going to be a quickly growing and changing distribution channel, and they're creating individual apps or individual solutions for every single piece of content that they want to get on mobile devices. But it's really not a very scalable way to do it. It doesn't make sense for every single publisher to create a new app for each piece of content. It doesn't make sense for consumers to have to install a new app for every single piece of content they want to consume. So what we want to do is take what Script does and make it mobile so that a publisher can simply upload a piece of content to our site, and then we'll instantly make it available and extremely readable and shareable on any mobile device.
So Patrick, when we talk about mobile, I have always the problem that you have these kind of devices I'm using for my moderation today, and you have kind of this one. I think these are totally different devices. So in the industry, you always talk about mobile, but it's something quite different if you use this one or that one. And there's some interesting user statistics, especially from a service which is quite smaller than your service. Read it later, just published some days ago. So usage statistics of tools like yours, and you see that people tend to read lengthy stories on the iPad in the evening or during the weekend, and they save it during daytime while at work or something like that. So there's something like a magazine behavior on this device and something like the usual mobile phone behavior on that device. So how do you deal with that? If you establish a big content platform where distributing on different devices, how do you deal with that? Can you really syndicate content on all these devices with one machine and thinking that this really works?
First of all, Jochen, let me say that for me it's a big pleasure to represent. It's not only that I'm forced to do that, but it's a big pleasure for me to represent a traditional publishing house on this panel. And we just talked about it before, so thank you for your recommendation. This is exactly the way we are going. So just to let you know a little bit, we publish a bit more than 250 magazines worldwide, 77 of which are published in the German market. And what we did over the last months and years, and this may sound like an easy exercise, but it's a big step forward for us to build up a centralized content pool, because the enormous value of all the contents we have is something that is a value in theory, as long as you are not able to deal with the content in a structured way. And to make that exactly happen, what you just talked about, to modify this content and adjust this content to all devices and all channels that are relevant for the consumer audience. So even if pooling content, if content databasing may sound as a boring step to talk about, this by far was one of their biggest exercises of our, let's say, digital content management history. And today we have an amount of assets that we really own, with more than 19 million different assets in this database. Some of them from very current history, some of them a bit older, but we are now able and in the position, and we just did this a few weeks ago, launching mobile applications and also in cooperations with partners. So our target and our main proposition is not to find the best possible way to bring it to different devices and to have one single app for every single magazine experience in the digital work, but partnering with the best possible partners in the market is something that we really emphasize on and that we already started. So you are all invited to visit us at our stand in the main reception area for the Media Innovation Lab, where I would really be happy to show you what we are doing. So our core proposition is around producing the best possible content ever to attract the best possible journalists, to collect and assemble most people around the fireplace listening to our stories and just being entertained or informed, and to partner with you guys and also with other guys to see what are the relevant channels and how are they working against our targets. Because honestly, we try a lot of things. Do I know right now what will be the one and only, what maybe will be the most relevant set of channels in the digital world? No. So we had to do our homework first and be flexible and efficient and quick. What not always is so easy in testing the most relevant distribution channels.
So I asked my question, which you didn't answer later again. The question was, how do you do that? How do you do something like a database journalism, pushing content on different devices and so hoping that people will pay for it? But I have another question for you. So why do these guys Why don't they sue you all the time? So at the end, what you're doing is you're building little magazines out of their content. So, but you never got sued, as far as I know.
As far as I know. So, Instapaper is a tool for users, and
the real utility of it is very local and personal. It's, I see this page in my web browser, and I hit save effectively. And because that's really not an offensive or new thing to the world, publishers really see it the same way I do and the same way the users do, which is this is a tool for the users to save content for later that they have already looked at, or that they've already seen the first paragraph of, and oh, I want to read this, but I don't have time right this second, so I'm going to save it. Otherwise, people used to print them out. Hopefully, I'm saving some paper. They would also often hit save or make a temporary bookmark that they would forget about. The problem is, in reality, the most common solution to this problem was you'd open up in a tab, and then you would save the tab somewhere in the background. Oh, I'm going to read that sometime soon. And then the browser would eventually crash, you'd lose your tab, and you would just never read it. And so most of the publishers view Instapaper as really a tool for engagement and to increase engagement that was before a little bit flawed or weak.
But you take away their traffic.
No, I would go further. I was going to say that the publisher should be paying Marco, not suing him, because I think that a problem for publishers now is the relationship between the stream of information. You find in information streams like Twitter being a very big, robust stream, Facebook, other sort of real-time streams, and this sort of static repository of content. And I think there's an increasing issue with driving traffic, content discovery, and driving traffic to web pages and static content sites. And so I think in the future, already for publishers, Patrick, tell me if you disagree, but I think it's very important to be present in the stream and to be present in the tools that users make use of to discover content. That would include TweetDeck. And I think also I would put Instapaper in that category as well. It's a tool for accessing content, saving it. Effectively, it's a way to drive people, to drive traffic to that content. And it's a new form of distribution, and I think TweetDeck is similar. And I think that will become increasingly important as the streams of information get bigger and more complicated and noisier.
And there's a huge debate going on when we talk about discovery of content, so that, well, old-fashioned RSS is dead. So we are using it, but maybe most of the people just check their Facebook feeds, use their Flipboard application or one of these new kind of clustering engines trying to get meaning out of their social feeds. So do you think that, well, Twitter or Facebook are the new RSS tools for the broad public?
I think that RSS it's not dead, and it probably isn't going to die. I don't know if it will grow tremendously from where it is now. Maybe it will shrink a little bit. I think the interesting difference between Twitter and Facebook and other content streams, Foursquare, is that there's a social aspect and an element of content selection, screening, and filtering through your social graph, whether that has to do with news and information content or places to go, or all of that can now be filtered in a way that is partly driven by the user and the way they use tools like TweetDeck and similar tools, and also partly driven by what happens within the stream by people you know within your social graph, and also people who you may not know who are contributing to a story trending, and that sort of complex interaction is missing or much harder within RSS, and I think that's the big disadvantage for RSS going forward, is there's no social dimension.
So I like Script because it has a lot of social features to discover content. So can you tell us a little bit about your strategy for the next year about that?
Yeah. So I think that what I would call socially optimizing content is becoming increasingly important. Over the last few years, search has been a very dominant source of traffic for content, and now we're seeing, I think everyone is seeing social through the stream becoming a huge traffic source. So I think that it's important that content owners think about socially optimizing their content. And the social ecosystem is changing so quickly that there's really a lot of new things you can do. And what you can do now is actually, you can be social to a whole different degree than you could have just a year ago. I mean, recently it was as simple as adding Facebook and Twitter buttons to a page of content. But what we've actually done is we've created a whole social experience around content where you sign up through Facebook, You read things on the site, you share what you're reading with this feature we have called readcasting. That gets pushed to the top of your profile, and then the people who are following you on the site, who you found through Facebook, can then see in their feed what you're reading. So we're creating our whole own stream, sort of like what TweetDeck has, but just around reading, and creating a new way to push content to you based on that. And for certain types of content, this has been extremely effective at making it get social distribution. We've seen all sorts of written works go viral that you wouldn't expect to go viral. We've seen scientific papers go viral. We've seen court filings go viral, books go viral, and that's just it's all around creating the right kind of social atmosphere for a piece of content.
You have a store there, so how much money do you make with paid content?
Well, right now, you can upload content to the site and give it away for free, or you can sell it through the Script store. How much?
Thank you. Join me, come, Stefan.
Well, the question is how much what?
So here's a major investor asking, how much money do you make with paid content, man?
We're actually still mostly a free platform. I don't think we've really nailed the selling piece. I'm a believer that users are not going to really pay for lots of content until they have an incredibly good consumption and purchase experience, and I think that requires us to be on mobile devices. And I mean, while Scrib does work on mobile devices, I don't think we've really scratched the surface of creating a great content consumption experience on mobile devices. So that's really our next push. We just raised $13 million, and we're going to be using that to really go mobile in a big way and create a commerce platform for written content.
So maybe I can, well, we did some research in this little startup, Steffi mentioned before, about what would people pay for. And they pay for handcrafted content, for example, which is quite interesting. So we had that at dinner, so if you just put up PDFs of whatever, magazines or books, people tend not to pay for them. They have to look beautiful and be wonderful. And so that's your major problem at the moment. When you want to sell, redistribute print content on these devices and get money out of it. So how do you do that? How do you show that you have beautiful content?
So it's a problem and an opportunity at the same time. And let me explain, and I'm very sure that I may say something pro-aggressive that most of you guys may not really like, because some of the research, and we did a lot of testing, what are the best possible formats, what are the best possible brands, what are the best possible channels to redistribute, to reuse our valuable contents for new target groups and create additional revenue streams. So one of the findings is that, for example, when we talk about tablet or iPad opportunities around distributing content, that the easier and the closer the content experience is to what people already know from the traditional magazine world, the more they are willing to pay for it. And this is really something not very easy to understand, because it comes back to the point that if you build an application or whatever, also through partnering, you don't always, I totally to agree what you said, you don't always need to build an own app for every single thing. This is not what the consumer is looking for. But we have the most people paying for it on experiences that really look quite similar to the traditional magazine experience. I'm absolutely sure that we are talking only at this point of time and that this may change, but the more interaction you have, the more complicated you make it, the more you add video streams, additional photos and links from everywhere to everywhere else within the experience, the more complicated and cost-intensive it gets, but at the same time, the more it, from a consumer point of view, it has a look and feeling that can be compared very easily to a traditional web experiences, where the consumer already over years learned that it is for free, mainly, but even with high quality content. So feedback and research we did say, and we already launched 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, one of our magazines as a pretty classical e-paper experience with some additional navigation elements, support elements, and also elements that make it possible to consume it in a comfortable way also on iPhone devices with a very small display. But the easier it is and the more there is an end and the beginning of a content experience, the more the user has a feeling that there is a group of editor or an editor-in-chief that says this is a set of contents that is relevant for you, the more likely they will pay for it. This is what our experiences say. And the more complicated you make it, the tougher it is really to put a price tag on it. And only one last sentence. I'm sure that this will change. I'm sure that this is just because of what they learned over the last decades and years. The first cars also used to look very much like horse-powered coaches. After people realized that they don't need this design for a car anymore. But at this point of time, the challenge for a publisher really is to do the one thing that still generates a very healthy revenue stream, but also to test new things. And I'm very happy to work together with people like you, to test this, to also test at the same time what will be the future models. Without stopping.
Sorry. I want to elaborate on something.
Sorry, without stopping what pays your money today.
I have a comment on that too. I guess Trip does too. But I wanted to just reference what I heard Jim Breyer say in one of the opening panels here, where he said that, paraphrasing, that sort of trying to defend those revenue models puts you in a position where you can't really innovate and drive new models and new kinds of content. And are you worried about that? How do you, if you're really saying we're defending revenues, but we're not going to, and we're just testing things on the other side, as opposed to the rest of us on the panel who are really trying to build businesses off of those new models, it creates a different dynamic. And I've worked in traditional media too, so I know, I'm sympathetic and I know how hard it is. But is that an issue?
So very short. For me, it's really doing both. I think really you have to do both. You have to build the businesses, you have to find the new models. But if today you are able also in a digital world with a digital product to earn money from what people already learned to pay for, I really would like to do that at the same time, to take this money and finance everything else. As long as it pays the money, I would not like to not take it.
So I just like to talk about the strategy you guys are doing where you're partnering with a lot of different companies to create apps for different content. I mean, I just want to make clear that I think that's absolutely the right approach right now. And the point I was really trying to make is that that right now, well, that is the right approach. The entire ecosystem is changing very quickly, and all of us need to just keep trying new models. And if you ask me in the very long term, looking 10 years out, is the right solution to create a new app for every single piece of content out there? My guess is maybe in some cases, yes, but there's definitely a very long tail of content where it's not the right case. And what we're going to try to do, and we're going to play one role in the ecosystem, is where we'll allow a content owner to simply upload a PDF, put a price on it, and allow people to start buying it in a way where it instantly, with one click, is available, synced between all their devices with a really great reading consumption experience. And I mean, it's going to be a long time before we build something that works quite that well. It's going to take a lot of just iteration and experimentation, and I think that the entire industry is going to need to experiment and try a lot of things. I mean, right now, I'm looking forward to seeing the demo after this because I haven't seen what you guys are working on. But I think that's a great step. It just I think we all need to be prepared for things to change a lot of the next few years. I mean, as much as it's changed in the last 3 years, it's going to happen again or even more in the next 3 years.
But what you said before is that that on tablet devices, so I have the feeling that there's a different reading experience than on other devices or on your PC screen or whatever. And I think services like yours will support this kind of laid-back reading during the evening. So did your service change when the iPad came? So did you realize that there are different people using the service in a different way?
Oh, certainly. The iPad has been a huge boost to Instapaper because what I very quickly learned is that a lot more people than I had assumed really preferred reading on a much larger screen than a smartphone, which is obvious now in hindsight. And I think, to address the earlier topic, I think publishers now are assuming that everyone needs their own app, and everything has to be its own app for its own content. And I don't think that's going to be a long-term thing, because publishers, in many cases, can't afford to have their own apps. Not every publisher is big or has a lot of money to spare. So we have a huge long tail of content, most of which are not going to make their own apps. If you look on the desktop, in the desktop computing world, most publishers don't have their own apps there either. We have a web browser, and the web browsers are very good. And I think right now, the landscape and what we're basing a lot of these assumptions on is a few things that pervert the market right this second, which is that right now the best way to make money with your content in the mobile space is with apps, just by selling them, especially in the iOS world and in the Kindle world as well, but that's a lot smaller. So right now, that fact is kind of skewing the realities of what's really best here. Also, a lot of the apps that we're seeing from publishers are their version 1s, or they're apps that aren't even out yet. And so we're making these judgments based on apps that either don't exist or still have a long way to go. And I think ultimately what we're going to find is that very few publishers have the ability or can justify creation of apps that are very good. And that's why I believe, for me, this is in the tool space. I mean, all of us up here are a little bit biased because of our personal and business goals. But for me, Instapaper is a tool to help users. I'm not trying to address the supply of content. I'm trying to increase the demand. And from all the feedback I've received and all the numbers I've seen, as far as I can tell, I've succeeded. Instapaper does increase the demand for reading good content, because the scenario I described earlier, where you save tabs and then never look at them again, or the way most browsers do, you kind of just skim past a long article and say, I don't have time to sit here and read this. I prefer to create a situation where you can read that, and to enable people to read content that they were either not reading at all before or were reading poorly without much attention or retention.
It's wonderful to see that Instapaper is one of the most requested features in different apps, like including yours. Yeah, so you don't have it.
We're working on it for sure.
And also, I remember Slate having to change their app so that they have Instapaper support now. What is remarkable is that you're doing this all on your own. You're just a one-man team doing programming 16 hours per day or something like that. So
that would be nice.
So you just live off the revenues of the App Store, don't you?
That's correct. Again, as I said earlier, the assumptions about what works and what doesn't, and what's profitable and what does and what isn't right now, are heavily skewed, because the App Store itself is very profitable, and I think that's because Apple, for the first time in our industry, there's a really easy way to buy something with real money, and that because almost everybody has credit card information entered into iTunes already, except people who don't have credit cards. But most iPhone and iPad buyers have a one-step process to pay money for something, which is type in their password, and that's it. Which, by the way, is just as difficult as buying a free app, or downloading a free app. So Apple has made it very, very easy to pay money. We don't have that luxury in other markets. We certainly don't have it on the web. And I think if we had that in web browsers, and if people were more accustomed to paying for many websites and a lot of web content, I think the discussion would be very different. And I'm not confident enough to say that will never happen. I would love for paying for web content to become the norm. And as soon as that is the norm, if that ever happens, I'm right there to support it, because Instapaper supports paywalls.
So how many emails do you get per day from investors asking you to expand the service?
Enough that I feel very guilty that I can't respond to all of them, or that I choose not to.
I learned that you normally do not answer emails at all, so it's really hard. You are really hard to reach. I don't know how we managed to get you here, but you never answer your code all the time and just get the revenue out of the App Store. Is that correct? So how long can you do that? It's a serious question.
How long can my business keep going? Well, I've taken the highly risky and questionable approach of charging money for a product. And so far, that's working. So it's kind of hard to say how long that's going to keep working because it seems so simple and so outrageous that I'm charging money for a service and I'm spending less than I make. So far, it's doing great.
So you're the perfect example of these kind of app store entrepreneurs.
Sure. I mean, the App Store is great for small developers because of the ease of payment, as I said before, and because the amount of work required to make a good iOS app, for many reasons, including its small size and scope of elements and the quality of the tools, it's a workload that one person can do. One even moderately decent programmer can make an iPhone app, hire out somebody to make an icon for it that looks nice, and sell it for money. It's that simple.
Mm. So, unfortunately, our time is up. But if there are any questions like how many apps Instapaper is selling or something like that, you just please ask them
One.
now. So, are there any questions?
Lev Gershenson, Yandex Moscow. Well, I've got one short question. Aren't you afraid that, the sites of newspapers and news magazines will be useless in some years if, there will be emerging a large amount of very comfortable and sexy ways to read their content, that they will be only providing us with the texts and number of letters and nothing more.
So is the web dead, basically? Maybe for you?
For me?
And also for you?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
I'll take it if you want.
Please.
I think, as I said, I think the web is not really going away, and I think the appification of content, I believe, is temporary. But even if publishers move to a lot more paywalls and a lot more restrictions so that tools like mine have a harder time indexing their content, as long as it's served in a web browser, I can still get to it. Instapaper, the way I support a paywall is I support the login you already have. If you are on a site that requires a login of any form, whether it's paid or not, I save a copy from your browser when you hit the bookmark. So I save your copy and I serve it only to you. And the publishers love that. The ones I've spoken to love that because my tool still works and enables their content without intruding on their business model. And I really prefer to stay out of their business dealings and really just be a tool for the users and stay in user land.
But I think your tool, and TweetDeck does this too, allows users to aggregate their own content and basically publish their own magazine. And I don't know if that was the question, but I think that is a trend that will continue.
Want to say something?
So definitely, yeah. I mean, the web. I truly think that there will be a move still in the direction of mobile, and whatever the format will be, it will play a significantly higher role. But from everything I see, the web will not be dead itself. It's just another channel. How these content can be put in front of the user. So definitely not.
Okay. One more question.
Adler from Free Software Studio. First of all, Marco, loved your work. And I think you're a big inspiration for a lot of micro ISVs, so keep it up.
Thank you.
And I was actually just thinking about the whole concept of business relationship between consumers and content providers, and it may be interesting to think about a model where, let's say I'm not interested in creating a billing relationship with the Wall Street Journal, but I may be interested in consuming their content every some time. So an Instapaper button on a Wall Street Journal webpage where I click it, and the next time I open my iOS app, I do an in-app purchase and pay 99 cents to Marco, which splits the money with the Wall Street Journal, could be a very interesting way to streamline consumption, distribution, and because like I said, I'm not really interested in the Wall Street Journal app. I want to use Instapaper, let's say Scribd if it makes sense for me, or TweetDeck or whatever.
That's certainly one place where services like mine can go. I think that, again, I prefer to stay out of the publisher's business ends of things. And The fact is, Instapaper is used mostly to save content that is not from big publishers. My number one most frequently saved site is usually one of the major newspapers, but it's usually only about 2% of all saved articles. And even out of the top 10 sites, that only represents about 9 to 11% of all saved articles. And then there's a very long tail after that. So I don't really, at the moment, I don't really have the resources to go out and make business deals with every publisher that matters. But the bigger decision there is I don't believe that I should be doing that. I would really, as I said, I'd rather prefer to stay as a tool for the users and keep increasing demand and increasing reader engagement and retention as much as I can. And that's an area that I can and do compete very well in, and I'd rather really stay out of the business dealings.
I think newspapers and magazines, obviously, and other kinds of content providers create lots of great content. And I mean, I think we need to remember that there are people creating that content, which is really valuable. And you have to really ultimately to really serve the whole ecosystem, we need to build something that is valuable for the content creators and for the consumers. And I think that ultimately we do need to figure out business models that will work for these publishers. And I think that would be awesome if you can pay per article for Wall Street Journal articles. It's just that that's a very hard thing to get right. I mean, simply delivering the content in a user-friendly way to different mobile devices is a hard problem, and Marco's doing that really well right now. But you also need to figure out pieces like the payment piece, and you have to figure out the piece that's going to make the publishers happy. And I mean, it's going to take years to have all this work together in a way that can really support a thriving ecosystem. I think it could be done. It's just the pieces need to line up over time, and all of us need to just iterate on our products.
I mean, tell us, when we talked before about this very successful example from the US, can you tell us about that? Because I found it very impressive, the thing you did in the US with a big publisher.
With Forbes. Yeah, so an example of one of the ways we work with a publisher is we worked with Forbes, and they had Forbes is actually the first magazine ever put Warren Buffett on the cover, and they've done many interviews with Warren Buffett over the years. And what they did was they took all of their interviews with Warren Buffett, they put them together into one new magazine, and they created this new Forbes Warren Buffett magazine that they published on Scribd. And since we bring the publishing and distribution costs down to practically zero, they're basically able to just create a whole new piece of content for free. And this piece of content went up. It instantly went viral on our site and had something like 100,000 readers within a few days. We were able to share the ad revenue with them in that case. And that just shows there are plenty of business models for these publishers to pursue, and their content that they've accumulated over the years and they're currently creating is really valuable. It's just going to take a lot of time and iteration and development of the ecosystem to create something that will ultimately allow them to build big businesses.
But I think the answer to that question is it sounds like the publishers will have to share revenue in order to get distribution, and that's not something that's been true traditionally for publishers, and that's kind of a big deal.
Unfortunately, we are deep in the negative time zone already of this panel structure here, and I get a lot of kill signs, so thank you very much, dear panelists. Thank you for discussing the topic with us. Bye-bye.